So thank you very much for joining us this evening. Going to do a session I've been wanting to do for a while, which is just around succession planning for leagues. Um, there's a couple of things that we're going to cover through this, kind of looking at succession planning in general, the benefits of it, the who's, the where's, the why's, and the how's. Going to touch on volunteer recruitment, and this is expanding on webinars I've done previously for clubs, but trying to do a bit more of a league slant on it. What I will say with this is the health check I always give, which is I can't give you a magic bullet that will suddenly recruit 50 volunteers out of thin air. It's probably also nothing that's particularly revolutionary, but hopefully it may just put some different ideas in your head and give an opportunity to kind of come up with some new ones as well. I'm then going to do a little bit briefly around conducting elections if we are in the place where we manage to have multiple volunteers competing for the same role. And then, because I've got a bit of a captive audience this evening, I thought I'd touch very briefly on a couple of the technology updates that have come through over the last couple of weeks from the FA. I'm conscious as we're in this little bit of a grey area of some things are still in whole game, but more and more functionality moving over to the new competitions portal. I'll run through kind of what's in which platform at the moment. One thing that isn't on there is just briefly touch on plans for a club affiliation for next season. So it will probably be about an hour, but I hope it is going to be useful this evening. So going to move on to the succession planning. Now I've had, thank you for those who have been filling in the form. I've had 4 responses so far, so what I probably appreciate is not necessarily going to give us hard and fast information, but I just wanted to kind of touch on really where we are with it in terms of hopefully putting a little bit of positive spin on league volunteering. Part of the reason that I wanted to run this session is I know that it is always flagged in conversations with leagues around one of the biggest challenges facing league administration, same as it is for club administration. So around recruiting new volunteers, making sure that key posts are filled, and that actually, as we're looking into the future, that there is continuity for those. Looking quickly through the form responses, I'm going to pull this one over. What is really encouraging to see is that actually when you look at how long people have been on management committees, we've got some relatively new people that have joined us. So we've got as many people that have been here for under 5 years that joining us, that have been here for over 10. And then in terms of number of active committee members and people really supporting the management of the league and the administration on a day-to-day basis, actually we are looking at decent numbers, five volunteers plus on each league. And actually what's probably most encouraging to see is the responses for these 2 bottom ones, just around how recently people have been elected to the management committee. So 4 leagues joining us this evening have had someone appointed this year. And then the leagues are also actively considering succession planning. So that is absolutely fantastic to see, and hopefully means that we're coming at this not necessarily from a standing start, but from a bit of a running start, as it were. I do think one of the key reasons that we've, particularly within the county, highlighted succession planning as a bit of a risk for us in terms of overseeing football and supporting the leagues is just we're very conscious that quite a number of leagues rely on what we would consider a relatively few number of key figures for the management of the league, and that's not in any way to kind of play down the importance of those individuals. But when we're trying to look at it from a business risk, I think as you look at that high reliance on low numbers, if any, for whatever reason, one of those key figures or most influential figures was unable to fulfill the role, for whatever reason, whether it's they've stepped down or are unable to do it due to illness, let's say, then actually that puts the league in a difficult position and puts the county in a position where we may suddenly have to step in to support the league. So actually taking proactive steps like this evening is really beneficial to looking ahead and making sure that we're in as strong a position as a county and as a football community as possible. So preamble over, moving on to succession planning. So the benefits of it. This threefold, trying to identify this. So going through a succession planning process, spending that time and dedicating that time to looking at your structure, looking at the succession plans, helps the leagues to identify the critical roles within the league the skills that are going to be required to fulfill those roles, and then look at the volunteers that currently have those skills, or where you may be able to develop volunteers to make sure that they have them. It also pushes leagues to probably think and do some future planning, look about what skills, knowledge, or volunteers may be needed in the future, so you can begin planning for that. And I think when you look at the changes over the last 5 years, certainly, I was going to say as long as I've been in post, I've now been in post for 7. But through that time, just more and more reliance on technology, making sure that we've got volunteers in place that are comfortable with emerging technologies as they come through, social media and so forth. Doing that kind of future-proofing, forward planning is really beneficial to the stability of the league. Got knowledge games. I'm not entirely sure. I think that's meant to be knowledge gaps. So by understanding your future needs, your skills, and the volunteers, it can help you understand where there are knowledge gaps and where you may need to plug them. And then finally, it supports the development and retention of volunteers in the long term, to make sure that those volunteers that you have or that are coming through are feeling supported and are going to be there for the long term. Doing succession planning then also helps improve that recruitment process, gives you a chance to take a step back and look at who the volunteers are, where they're coming from, how it can be improved. Also then volunteer engagement, what we can do to make sure that volunteers are staying in positions for longer, how we can best support them, how we can best engage and retain them. And then part of that will probably also be identifying and improving volunteer training and development. Ultimately, then, it also avoids volunteer burnout and avoids that risk of probably putting too much pressure on lower number of volunteers who then may feel that pressure, become stuck in the same role, or just ultimately do get burnt out from the stress of trying to run the league, and take on too much responsibility, particularly those volunteers that are also full-time employees. So I'm going to do a quick overview of the succession planning process, and then I'm going to come on particularly for do a bit more detail just around the first couple of steps in there. So really, when you start with the succession planning process, it's important to identify your current positions, so current and future needs. That means what's the league doing well, where you could do better, and what changes you're anticipating over the next 5 to 10 years, and how you may need to respond to that. That should then give you an understanding of the critical roles within the league that you need to have in place to be able to meet those challenges of the future, to retain teams, to grow, to consolidate your existing membership, whatever that kind of strategy may well be for that period. It also then allows you to, as we said before, assess any skills gap in the league and identify potential volunteers that may have that. Develop and prepare potential successors, getting tongue-tied again, and evaluate the succession plan. So that's those last two aspects is really important as well, around trying to take that step back and I say, look at those key roles, look at those key volunteers, but make sure that actually they're getting the support, and we've got a future pathway for new volunteers coming in that may support them and ultimately may see them succeed them. As I said, going to take a quick look through that first couple of steps in more detail. So the first aspect there was identifying your league's current and future needs. As we mentioned before, this is trying to understand what it's doing well, where it could do better, and what changes are needed in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, after this meeting, probably tomorrow or Wednesday, I'm going to be sending out a guide and pack that the FA have put together, which is effectively a fillable PDF, and we'll take you through this process. And it's broken that 3-stage process into 3 different areas. So it's looking at the league management committee, the league activities, and then the league workforce. So how the league's managed, what the processes are in place around the management committee and the day-to-day administration of the league. Again, looking at what's done well, what could be done better, and what's likely to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. League activities, this is probably more around engagement with the clubs, kind of divisions that are running. And for those leagues that are looking to grow over that period, it's a particularly critical aspect to understand what burden or what stress that's going to put on those that are running the league. And then the final aspect there, league workforce, that's probably looking a little bit further within the league around other volunteers, whether that's not in the management committee, but club volunteers, referees, and so forth, and look at how that's going to how that landscape is going to change over the next 5 to 10 years, as we said. Next aspect is to look at those critical roles within the league, and taking those positions that we just picked out in the matrix in the previous slide, looking at what positions will really help that growth plan that we've got. Again, it's looking at what's going well, what could be done better, and what changes are going to occur, but looking then at what impacts, what individuals really influence that. So which management committee members, which positions are needed to keep doing what we're doing well, to improve what needs to be done better, and then to influence those changes that are going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. And finally, to consider what vacancies may arise in those critical roles. As I mentioned before, part of that may well be volunteers that are perhaps retiring or stepping back from being as active within these league roles. It may also be ones where you know that they're planning to move away from the area and therefore maybe vacating the role, or where they're new roles which are going to be coming in. Again, it gives the worksheet that I'm going to send through, gives that opportunity to fill it in, identify when that vacancy is likely to occur, and then put any other notes in potentially around recruitment strategies and so forth. And I'll come on to that in a bit more detail later. Ultimately, at the end of this exercise, the hope is that as a management committee, you know what you're doing well, what you may need to do better, and what changes you'd like to make in the future, critical roles which are needed to be able to contribute to that success, and kind of a timeline about when you expect those roles to become vacant, and you may need to recruit them. And if you're looking at introducing new positions, particularly to respond to external forces, it may be worth trying to apply those all at once or stagger them through over the next few years. It's really, there's no one size fits all. It's for yourselves as the management committee to really understand that strategy and decide what is best for the league. Which takes me neatly on to the different structures available for the leagues. And I'm fully conscious that it's out here this evening talking to a lot of established leagues that have been around and been doing a good job for a long time. So we'll probably already have one of these structures in place. But again, if you are a league that's looking to expand quite considerably over the next few years, whether that's taking on different formats, adding additional futsal provisions and so forth, it may be worth looking at your structure to make sure you do still have the right format for you. Typically, I've broken it down into three key models. Functional model, so I've called them tasks, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but different functions related to different parts of operations. I think we probably typically see this in adult leagues, but looking at referee secretaries, fixture secretaries, discipline secretaries, and so forth. Youth leagues or the larger adult leagues may then look at age group or a divisional model. So you would have a single coordinator who may take on all of those operational leagues, but just within operational functions, but just within a small section of the league. And then the combined one, which may well have the functional secretary, so discipline secretaries, referee secretary, and so forth, but then have them supported by age group or divisional representatives on the committee. As I say, every league will probably have one of these models already in place, but it is always worth taking that step back every now and then and making sure that it is still appropriate for the size of your league. There are other considerations that if you are looking to expand, particularly that you should be considering. That would include whether you have elected player, coach, or parent representatives. Obviously, a big driver for us within the FA is around making sure that the voice of the child is heard and considered. So we would really encourage leagues to consider player assemblies or player representatives on committees, likewise for team managers and coaches. Whether there are additional operational functions that need to be filled or explored, potentially around social media. For larger leagues, we'd also encourage looking at the assistant officers, and that is a great way, again, of doing succession planning, because you've got you're bringing up somebody with all of those skills to be able to fulfill that role. And then finally, it should always be considered how you would manage a conflict of interest if one of those role holders also has a role within a club. So, for example, if you've got a discipline secretary, what happens if that person's club commits a rule breach? How does that get managed, and so forth? ultimately, at the end of this, as I said, we've got that process in place to be able to identify the needs of the league, potential vacancies that are coming up in timeframes. You may end up with a little bit of a matrix along these lines. So looking at the key roles that we know need to be filled, but maybe becoming vacant in the future, or have identified the key skills and the knowledge that's required for that role, the likely timeframe for the vacancy, current volunteers who may have the potential to learn those key skills, and then tactics for recruitment. This is something we probably encourage the league going through once a season, or certainly once every couple of years, just to make sure that you are doing that contingency planning and you are allowing a volunteer pathway to come through. Before I move on to volunteer recruitment, are there any questions just around that? Does it make sense? Anything from anybody? Nope, can't see any hands up. Perfect. So I'll move on to the next part, which is all around the volunteer recruitment. And as I said before, can't promise a magic bullet, but hopefully there'll be a couple of new ideas or something to get the cogs turning on this. So the first thing I want to kind of highlight on the volunteer recruitment, I've split it from internal to external. So internal is looking at that league community. And that is that when you look at the league management committee, it's very much the top of a pyramid of what is actually a really large footballing community. And that as a competition, you may well have a larger reach than you would initially realise. So if we look at the management committee, you're elected and you're represented and you're working on a day-to-day basis with the players and the club officials from the clubs. But it's important to remember that beyond there is also a much wider, I've got club community, but that would apply to wider league community that you are impacting and are interacting with on a weekly basis that you may not always appreciate. So we're looking at, parents of the players, partners, family members, and so forth, interested people within the local football community that are passionate fans and come out and watch week in, week out. All of those people are also potential volunteers that can move up that chain and support you at the management committee. I think it's fair to say as well that people within that league, whether they are the club volunteers, the players, partners, parents, and so forth, have a vested interest in keeping the competition going and hopefully have a passion for it as well. So when you look at the people within the league that you may be able to approach and kind of tap up and to recruit with you or to volunteer with you, adult leagues, we're looking at players are obviously particularly important, but particularly those that may be ending or nearing the end of their playing career. So you're looking at your 40-year-olds or so. Mick, can I just make sure you're muted, please, if you're on the phone?
Volunteers for recruitment.
There we go. I think I've managed to mute him remotely. With looking at the players, what I would say is that even a one-team adult club may well have 30 players, but that's also 30 people who may be able to volunteer, whether that's on a permanent or short-term basis, but also potentially 30 partners or parents or other family members who may well be able to get involved and may well put their hand up to support the league if asked. When we look at youth leagues, obviously parents are a massive source of volunteers and will probably account for the vast majority of the volunteers we see in club roles. But again, you could look at some of the older players, so 16 to 18-year-olds who might be interested in volunteering to build up their skills and experience to support their CVs if they're going out into the workplace, or university applications and they're looking to kind of enhance or expand on their UCAS application. And there's a couple of different tactics you can take with that. So I'll kind of come on to a couple of different strategies, but you can look to spread that load across lots of people, so do kind of bite-sized chunks or gradually draw people in by drip feeding responsibilities, pointing them as assistants, doing short-term placements within a role and so forth. What we found from our own internal research a few years ago was that about 43% of volunteers became volunteers initially because they had family members playing in a club. So I think it is important when we look at that kind of next rung down or the wider club community to really take advantage of the untapped potential that's out there. Part of that is probably looking at the professional skills that are already involved in the clubs within your league. So Just random examples on here. If you've got players who happen to be accountants, they could be potential treasurers or assistant treasurers to come through. If they've got family members that are refereeing in other leagues, they may be prepared to step up and help with referee appointments within your league because they know the local refereeing community. Or if you've got people who players whose parents work for social services, they could become welfare officers. What we always encourage with the clubs is that they make sure they record the occupations of their players or parents and create what we call a skills audit. So it's trying to look at who's within the club that already has the professional skills to be able to support those administrative duties within the clubs and within the leagues. What we find quite often is if someone has that professional experience, they're quite happy to put it to use in a volunteer setting and help out in the local community. So it's really important to try to build that database to get to know the people that are playing or supporting players in the league and see who's happy to help out. As we always say, the worst that's going to happen is they'll say no on that. I fully appreciate it's probably a bit harder when you're doing it from a league because you may, and particularly he says this as an FA rep, but using whole game system to do player registrations, you cannot add additional fields such as parents' occupation. But a lot of clubs will still be doing paper registration forms and collecting additional details from their parents. So even going out through the clubs to say, do you know of any players? Do you know of any parents that have accountancy backgrounds? Can they help us out by doing the league treasurer or doing some of the bookkeeping? May well get you in touch or give you that contact with people you wouldn't previously have come across. Now, recruiting externally is obviously a bit harder, but it is becoming easier. So two main ways of doing it, online and offline. Certainly putting recruitment posts out via social media. Again, if you're looking at professional skills, look through LinkedIn because you may well find people within your wider professional networks that have got time and want to help support a local community organisation. You've got online message boards on Facebook and so forth, on other local community groups, county FA notice boards, and then volunteer platforms like Do It, which is a volunteer platform we looked at a couple of years ago. You've then also got your more traditional offline routes, so your community notice boards in town halls or village halls, co-op and so forth, partner organisations, looking at, we always say actually trying to partner potentially with other sports leagues to help kind of consolidate some of that knowledge and information that they will have from running, let's say, the local cricket league or tennis club, and then job centres and so forth. What I would say with external recruitment is that it does come with a slightly higher risk in terms of guaranteeing commitment because the individuals are unknown quantities and they don't potentially have that emotional attachment with the competition. But it shouldn't be discounted as it can help grow the league and bring in fresh ideas and perspectives, as I say, particularly if they do have some of those transferable skills. Equally, even though they may not have that, let's say, emotional connection to the competition, they actually may also be more motivated because they're also looking to volunteer for a specific reason. They're not just putting their hand up because nobody else is. They're actually going out there. They're wanting to get those administrative experiences. They're wanting to give back to the local community and so forth. So actually, you may find they are more committed, shall we say. So certainly is worth exploring both of those options going forward. What we also have is put together a map of the local volunteer centres, which be useful to reach out to if you are looking to actively recruit at the moment. I've put in a couple of the neighbouring counties as well because I'm conscious that someone from Oxford could quite happily help out with in South Oxfordshire and so forth. The Community Action Bedfordshire is based in Leighton Buzzard, so right across the border, obviously from some of the Buckinghamshire leagues, Swindon again, straight down the M4 to get over to Newbury, Thatcher and West Berks area. So you may well find even going to some of those just outside our boundaries may well help recruits and volunteers. What I'm going to do is when I send around the slides and the recording later this week, I will make sure those contact details are sent out to everybody as well. And it'd be great to hear any success stories if you do reach out to them and you do find that that's been effective in recruiting new people. So as I said, a couple of creative ideas potentially to explore, just to try to make sure we're not doing things the same ways that haven't worked in the past. Try and get creative around how you're structuring the volunteer opportunities within the organisation. So I've got about a smaller slice of the pizza pie, so breaking roles into smaller bite-sized chunks to spread across multiple people. So the example I put here is an under 12 referee secretary rather than a referee secretary for 8 different age groups and 20 different divisions. Makes it a bit more manageable, means that you may have 8 people giving up 20 minutes a week rather than one person giving up 160 minutes a week. Next one is just trying to ask people to do it on a very short-term basis. So you may well find someone's happy to do a task like referee appointments, but on a monthly basis, rather than feeling that they're automatically being sucked into doing it forever and ever. And make the point here, you never know, they may also then stick around. So they may find they do really enjoy it, and they are happy to put their hands up, extend that, and then become effectively the permanent appointment. And then finally, trying to be more sociable. So running those end of season social events, getting to know the players, volunteers, club officers, partners, parents of players, and really making an effort to network and build those personal ties with them gives you that opportunity to get to know what skills are out there, who the people are that are participating in the league or are coming along week in, week out, wanting to watch the games and maybe happy to put their hand up and get more involved in a volunteer capacity. I know that I think it's the Reading West Berks League do this really well with kind of barbecues and so forth with the local league, or some of the local volunteers. So it's a great way to kind of give back, make sure the existing volunteers are rewarded, but also show off what kinds of benefit comes from volunteering as well and creating that sense of community. I think it's important to kind of recognise why people want to volunteer and what they're looking to get out of it. Obviously, volunteers want to feel valued, want to be needed, want to feel that their voice is being heard, that they're actually making a positive impact. So it's important to make sure you do give them some responsibility, give them a bit of ownership and accountability, so that they actually feel that they're playing an important part within the running of the league. They want to be supported, whether that's through access to CPD or development, or just making sure that if they are coming in as an assistant role, that they are being mentored and nurtured, and being given the skills and understanding to be able to complete the role. And then finally, understand what's expected of them. And I think that's a key one. Again, when I send out the resources afterward, I'm going to be sending out role profiles and job descriptions for some of the key roles that we've identified, and making sure that people are aware of those expectations when they put their hands up or when the call goes out to recruit volunteers is also important. Be realistic with time commitments. There's no point saying it's only going to be 20 minutes a week when you know it's going to be 2 hours or more. So we don't want it to be a surprise when people put their hands up, because I think what will happen then is if people do find they're suddenly being asked to do way more than they ever thought, give up way more time than they ever thought, then probably more likely to lose them. Whereas if they knew that going in, then they're more likely to stay committed to it. The other thing around managing volunteers is it's important to remember that volunteers are there representing the league as well. It's important to make sure that they sign a code of conduct at an absolute minimum, confirming what standards are expected of them and the consequences if they then breach that. Because as much as it's important to get volunteers in to make sure that they feel supported and valued, it's important to show to your members that people running the league are accountable. So make sure that they're being supported through the way that the management committee conducts themselves. Any questions or thoughts, observations just around recruiting volunteers? And I'd love to hear if there's any real success stories from yourselves over the last 18, 24 months. In that form we asked you to fill in there, I think it was 4 leagues that said they'd had somebody new joining them this season. So I'd love to hear where the new volunteers have been recruited from and just kind of share some of those experiences with everybody else that's on the call. So if anyone fancies putting their hand up just to share that, that would be great. Kelly.
Yeah, so we've had I think we've had 2 new members, and they've been brought on. One was a previous member who was there long before I was, walked away from it and has come back. And another is we recruited a secretary that was stepping down and brought him onto the league as just part of the management committee. And he now we've got 3 in the last year. And another lady that was a club secretary, and they go out and they do observations for us.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
And I didn't take that word in what Kelly just said from me as Mick. Kelly,
what?
You know what I'm talking about. I don't want to leave that secretary because she's one of the best ones in the county.
I'm going to put myself on mute now.
She's brilliant.
So how did you find those? Was it a case of, I think you said going out to the secretary, you did you know that they were stepping down from the club, so effectively headhunted them?
Yeah.
Or was it an open recruitment?
We know all of our secretaries quite well. We've built up a really, really good relationship with our secretaries. We've given them if they need to contact us, they can contact us. There's no sort of them and us. And we were aware that a couple of them were stepping down, and asked them if they wanted to come along. One in particular, a lady, had a really, really awful experience at the club she was at. She'd been there for years, and then they'd got somebody in that didn't quite like her, and she was just going to completely step away. But what she knew was too good to just let go.
Yeah.
So we tried to speak to her and offer her a position on the management committee, in the hope that she could help out with some of the league officers. And she does, but she's very good. But it's done well because we've got people. Obviously, we're Milton Keynes based, but we've got people from sort of Oxfordshire way, haven't we? That not quite Oxfordshire, but on the border, and Northamptonshire and Bedfordshire, and so those people are spread all over the place. So everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, football is quite incestuous anyway, isn't it? So everybody knows everybody, or so yeah. In that sense, we've been very successful. When I joined the league, we had, I think, 5 committee members. We've now got 11.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's how good we are. That's how good Kelly is.
I'm giving all of the credit to the league secretary on that one, Mick, not the chair.
I keep him in check.
I can give her. I can't speak highly of Kelly, so I'm doing my best to keep her. But if I can, I should be very grateful. If I can't, I should be very sorry.
Fair enough.
That's all I can say about a good secretary.
Absolutely, and I think that kind of experience goes to show just the importance of those personal connections, and investing that time in getting to know the volunteers, understand where those skills are as well, and where they can be used to help the management committee. That's really good to hear. Perfect. Does anyone else wanted to share just some experience and success stories? No, I can't see any hands up, so that's fine. I will move on to the next section. Next section is an entertaining one. Is around, get to it, conducting elections. Now, I know that we've had 2 what I would call competitive elections across the county in the last 3 years, I reckon. But how many people have been in the position where you've had 2 nominees for a role and had to conduct a competitive election? I'm seeing shakes of the heads for those who have got the cameras on, so that's fine. I'm not going to labour it too much, but obviously all going well. We've done the session this evening. We've talked succession planning. We've identified those roles. We've done some great volunteer recruitment, and suddenly we're in a position where we've got 2 or 3 outstanding candidates for a key role. We can wish, we can dream. So I will just quickly run over kind of contesting or running the elections. So just to kind of recap where we are. Returning officers, first of all, appointments run for 1 season only from AGM to AGM. Returning officers can stand for re-election without nomination, confirming your intention by a deadline. few candidates nominated by 2 clubs, I think effectively by the same deadline. If there are no candidates or contested roles, clubs still vote to confirm the appointments, but can do them in one motion. I think that's probably how the vast majority of AGMs will work year in, year out, with the same candidates being re-elected. And obviously, it's worth bearing in mind that when a vacancy occurs during the season, the management committee can fill that without an election, and then that individual just comes up for re-election at the next AGM. If we are in a position with contested elections, and I know we've had a couple of leagues that have looked for guidance on this over the last couple of years, I put down the key principles being consistency, fairness, and transparency. So that effectively means that we want to make sure that in conducting a contested election, we've got as level playing field as possible. So we want to make sure that all candidates have equal opportunity to present their application to the same depth, let's say, so they're getting identical guidance and support around how to present or submit their application, or being given the same duration for any written or oral submissions. I'll come on to that in a second. So we're using the same process for all elections. All members and candidates are aware of the process, and all candidates are treated the same. I would say that if you've run contested elections in the past, you should always adopt the same process unless there is a valid reason why they've been changed. So whether there was a concern raised, or we're adopting new technology, so we're finding better and more efficient ways of doing it, let's say. But what we wouldn't want to see is 2 different positions having 2 different types of elections at the same AGM or within a couple of years of each other, unless there's a valid reason for it. As I said, members should be given exactly the same access to resources, access to members to kind of pitch their campaigns, and treated the same at the election or at the AGM. The advice for management committee is probably a tricky one, but we would always encourage, and I think we've got a duty to reinforce the encouragement about staying neutral and avoiding showing support for any one candidate. This is firstly to avoid that perception of a conflict of interest or preferential treatment, but it also puts yourselves in the strongest position to work well with either candidate, whoever is successful for that. If the existing members of the management committee or the management committee as a block were to stand against effectively or petition against one candidate who is ultimately successful, it could also obviously lead to a very difficult working relationship. Hopefully, though, there shouldn't ever be a position where there is an undesirable candidate that's coming forward. Things you may want to consider if you are in a position where you're hosting a contested election. You can nominate an independent election officer to coordinate the election. I've supported a couple of leagues in this role over the years, and that's included just, I think, on one memorable occasion, being sat in a hotel room on holiday in Edinburgh, receiving email votes to make sure that it was an independent audit as to which candidate was successful. But more than happy to support in those kinds of functions, doing ballot counting, attending meetings, and kind of acting as that independent arbiter as necessary. From a practical point, you can invite candidates to provide written submissions in support of their applications, so a brief biography or kind of what it is that they hope to achieve in the role, particularly if it's a position of chair or president, let's say. Again, those should be circulated to all members at the same time as the AGM agenda, hopefully to be able to give members the opportunity to consider them. Alternatively, you might want to invite candidates to make statements at the AGM, so effectively give the same information but in person. If you do go down either of those routes, I'd make sure that they're getting the same brief as to what it is they're being asked to kind of speak about, whether it is a personal biography or what they're planning to bring to the role, and they should be given the same word count or time limit. If they choose not to use all of that, that's their choice, but we haven't given one party over the other additional access to kind of to promote their campaign. Finally, you might also want to give members the opportunity to ask questions at the AGM. If you do want additional resources, particularly around contested elections, Sport England Club Matters is a fantastic resource. It's got a lot of different user guides and kind of advice about how to run a community sports organisation. The election side was still quite light. I really struggled, I must admit, to find guidance about conducting an election in a community organisation. There seems to be an unwritten assumption that it never happens, which I think is probably borne out in reality. But it just does show that if it does come up, actually, it can be it's important to get it right, or to find the right resources out there. I say this as well as a member of the National Trust, and having seen all of the controversy or all of the debate that circled around kind of their elections over recent weeks as well. In general terms, though, I've got resources around succession planning, around elections, around club recruitment. We've got the NCVO, National Community Volunteer Organisation. I'm going to say off the top of my head because that fits, but that's the umbrella organisation that supports volunteering, and they've got a huge wealth of resources, particularly around recruitment, retention, development, management of volunteers. Club Matters provides very much the same thing from a sporting context. And although it's Club Matters, it's also League Matters. It's going to be just as relevant for league management committees. And then the final picture there on the far right is the guide which will get sent out this week around succession planning for leagues that the FA have put together, and kind of really goes through that kind of process about doing the review of the league management structure, doing the review of key roles, future planning, what skills are needed, and how to identify the volunteers for that. That is pretty much the resources around succession planning and volunteer recruitment. Before I go and do a few tech updates, are there any questions just around what we've covered tonight, or does anybody want to share any more experiences around succession planning, elections, volunteer recruitment, volunteer management? I'd love to be able to get any real world experience as well.
No.
Okay, no problems. I will move on with some tech updates then. So, as I promised, quick recap of the FA League platforms, and this is as of November 2022. So, whole game is largely as it was before, with the one exception of the new player registration requirements that have now moved over to Competition Portal. My expectation is that ahead of next season, the league structure will, and the teams functionality will likely also move over to Competition Portal. Reason for that is how clubs are managing all of their teams now, and it makes sense from an FA or a data infrastructure point of view to have it all now in that ecosystem. And I'm looking at Ian at this point because he knows these things far better than I do. But at the moment, that's all run through whole game. It's moving over to Portal. So as I say, I would expect ahead of league sanction for next year, that league structure process will be completed through Competition Portal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and keep this type of slide updated as we go through other webinars over the season, or as and when key functionality moves across, I will send it out in a Word document over to League so that you can keep track as to what's happening where, because there's more and more stuff flies back and forth. It's getting harder and harder to keep track of. I have an equivalent one for clubs as well, but I haven't got a slide on it, but I'm happy to send that out. There has also been some new club portal functionality that's come out over the last week. I'm really interested to try and see some faces as I put this next one up. As of this week's, clubs now have the ability to fold teams within Club Portal. Head in the hands from Ian. Before everyone despairs, let me provide an update on that. It shouldn't be any different, or they wouldn't be doing it any other time than they would have previously have emailed us and said our team's folded. Can the county do it on their behalf in a whole game? We're giving them the ability to do it. If a club folds a team in Club Portal, the league and the county will get an automatic notification to say that this team has folded. At that point, all player registrations, the league membership, and the team officials' connections will be severed. However, there is a 14-day cooling off period. So if within 14 days, for whatever reason, the club's made a mistake or they're able to reinstate the team, they can reactivate the team and we can restore all of those connections. As I said, I'm hoping it won't be done any more frequently than it would have been done when the clubs otherwise notified us. But it's trying to get to a environment where clubs are able to manage their data themselves and are managing their information kind of 365 days a year rather than a once a season check and challenge.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean the leagues are in control. The leagues are totally out of control of this data. This data gets removed without notification. Players just disappear. We have no history on the player portal, the competition portal of old players that we've registered and played and whatever. Teams can come in, disappear, move to other leagues. We don't know about it. It's just a nightmare. As a league, this data should be under our control. The league system should be separate to the club system. They should, when they allocate themselves into a league, they get put in. If they want to be removed, they should ask.
So I would disagree on the basis you will get a notification that says that they've done it
now, but we never, not to this point, that we got notifications over the last 3 years.
No,
and teams just disappear.
So it should have always been that we would have done that if we were advised by the club that the team had folded.
Yeah, but we're dealing with 6 counties.
Yeah.
We don't get 6 counties giving us that data. When they walk out and go to another league, we don't get that notification, and we keep hitting them. And the only way I can kill them is I make them pay after the AGM. I make them pay for their league fees if they moved.
Yeah,
And
which is
expensive to them.
Which is fair. The other thing they'll be able to do is if they don't have any active player registrations, they can move the team into a different league. Now, this will help, Ian, when you get the under-9s that put themselves in the East Berks Football League when they affiliate for the first time, and then they're contacting us at the weekend.
I love them playing as adults. I really am sure that Gary really understands that he's going to get some under-9s playing there. It's also like a problem that if you register a team and you put it down as male, okay, and then you can't change it and you happen to recruit a girl onto the team, you can't register that player because she doesn't match the team. This is rubbish. Make them all mixed. It doesn't matter.
We've already fed that on. I don't know whether you'll be pleased to know, but I'm part of the FA working group that is designing affiliation for next season. So we're putting all of these requests in.
Yeah, it's just it's so hard that when you're trying to reconcile 950 teams against what's on the whole game system, if I didn't have Got Football, I'd go to despair because I believe Got Football gives me exactly what I need. Where I go to the whole game system, I go, where's this team gone? Yeah. Oh, the team's changed its name again. And we got 1 week before we start the season. All the cards are out of date. And I send them a bill for 60 quid for reprinting the cards. Thank you, guys.
We're never going to be able to, I was going to say that there will always be user error or the clubs, I think, will always drive us mad with changing team names and stuff like that. There's only so much we can control.
The club should create the data, and the data should then be entered into a league system that is a copy of that data. If that changes, it should highlight that it's changed it. We should then be able to accept it and not against standard code of rules and our rules as to whether we're going to accept that data. Players should not just disappear. No, we've still got in the whole game system teams from 5 years ago. I can't get rid of them. I don't know how to get rid of them. So I create this group, blah, 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 under 10s, not in East Berks, and shove them in there. Hopefully they'll disappear one day. And you just go, God knows.
And I think and again, going over to the new platform, I'm really hoping they will do. It should be much more, what we're trying to get to is cleaner data. So, and that people have the ability to control and manage the data themselves, which I understand the reservations on that. I think there's a cultural change which may take some time, but I think the end goal on that is hopefully will be better. Okay. What I wanted to do though, I will show you what that functionality looks like, just so that you can see for yourselves kind of the steps that the clubs will go through. So hopefully you can see the club's portal now. If I click in our men's demo team, you'll see I now have the button or the option down on the bottom to fold the team. Click on that. Are you sure you want to follow the team? Gives them that confirmation. Select the reason. These are the same as they were before. Demo team. Tick the box again. All officials, players, and league memberships will be removed. County and associated leagues notified. Click next. Again, are you sure you want to do this? So they're trying to make it as difficult and put as many many checks and challenges as possible. At that point, I can fold the team. I get the notification. An email has been sent to your county FA and associated leagues, and the team will be deactivated and removed after 14 days. If I now come over onto this with any luck, I should have had an email. Maybe not yet. You will then get an email. I did have one the other day from when I checked the functionality. Let's have a quick look.
Alistair,
Yep.
can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So I understand what you're saying is that the club takes control. But for instance, if we have a team that folds mid-season, we fine them. We fine them £250 because they've withdrawn mid-season or after our AGM. And if they don't pay, we don't allow their players to register elsewhere. But in this case, it will deregister every player, and we then have no hold, because obviously what we do is if a club doesn't pay their fees, we will, and they fold, every player is then responsible. Every player registered to that team is then responsible for that £250, and we won't allow them to register for another team until they have paid their full part.
Yeah.
How then does this work?
So
that means a complete change of our rules then to fit in with something that.
So you already have the ability to request a full list of membership from a member club at any time. So if they folded the team, you can still request that, and they should still provide that. Equally, we can still see that data in the background to be able to provide that.
I understand that, but we cannot then put in sort of a football debt, because we don't.
That would come through us. That would have to come through us anyway.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying to you is then that makes even more work for me, more work for you, and all that they've got to do is go elsewhere and give themselves a new fan.
Yeah.
Again, hopefully that's harder and harder to do as well.
No, it's not.
It's not.
No, it's not. No, it's so easy.
As
got
much as,
one this weekend. Yeah, sorry, Karen.
Sorry. Updating full-time, club portal, whole game, is all well and good, but it's done at the perspective of, let's make things easier for the clubs, but you're not making things easier for the leagues. And if the leagues are finding it difficult, then that's when we go back to the other part. You're going to start losing the volunteers because it's just going to become too much. Sorry to rain on your parade here.
No, it's absolutely fine. And this is why this functionality came out this week. I told one club about it who was saying they needed to fold a team, and it was partly it's a club I trust in terms of the way they're run to be able to feedback as well. It's also why I wanted to bring it up this evening when I have so many league representatives on the call, so that I can get that feedback and pass it on to the FA and just say even if there's a report they can provide at the point it folds, or to provide a report of the player memberships so that you've got that data there. The other thing they may suggest, and again you potentially run into issues around GDPR, but whether at the beginning of the season you download the squad list for each team. But again, that's I know Ian's laughing at that, going, right, we've got to do that for 950 teams.
No, it's not that. We can do the export. We do the export every day because we're registering players every day, except for on the Saturday and Sunday. But we're doing the export. The export could have a new field called Team Folded against the player. That data is still there till the end of the season. They registered with us as a team for the season. GDPR means we can keep that data because it was for the season. Then at
And
the
for
end of the
purposes,
season, it would be wiped. But there are so many things missing in the club portal as to history of players, where they're playing elsewhere, before we approve them, that we can't check. And we've just won over the weekend. Suspensions suddenly came into the export. So I had to get my software updated to take account of a new column I didn't know about. But we've got one player who's showing on the Berks and Bucks website as being signed deny. And yet on the export, there's nothing. Against the club portal, there's nothing. And in the report on the Thursday, there's nothing. So I don't know if that player is thing. You can create fans for the same player 16, 17 times, 20 times. It's really easy. It doesn't stop you doing it because it's the only way you can get around the data structure of the portal that requires you to have the adult's damn date of birth to register a child, which makes no sense at all. Absolutely no sense. You do not need to know how old a bloody parent is to register a child. It really is. Sorry. I could go on for hours, mate. You know that.
No, I know, and we've had the debates, and we've ended up so I'm not going to go back into them.
I know. I don't want to go over it again. But the problem is, the FA do not treat leagues with any respect. There are no systems developed to help leagues. These are developed to help the FA and clubs. There is no intermediate system. We have to go out and buy systems to actually allow us to run the leagues, because there is so much change now in the way things are done. If you're running a youth league from under 7s, under 18s, there are so many different formats, so many different rules that apply at each thing, so much that you can't do it with the FA systems. They're not designed for it. They were designed as an academy system to keep records for academy players, and they spent so much money on it, they wouldn't let it go. And now I see from emails I'm getting from people, you've got business organizations who I don't actually like running some of the support stuff because they can't get a reply within 4 to 5 weeks. By the time they come back, they say, is this still a problem? I don't know. I've moved on now. That's 4 weeks ago. It's no good.
All I say on that, we'll keep trying to do the support we can at county.
I know you do. I know you do. And if we send emails to your guys and all of you, you'll do the things we need to do to try and solve some of the problems.
Yeah.
And I know that you know some of the problems you can't get round because they won't tell you what's wrong with it, and they won't tell me. And that annoys me more than anything as well, because I can keep proving they got it wrong. And they're things. When teams move between leagues before the start of the season, in a season, it creates havoc in their data structure. They cannot keep control of where the players are, because they're not treating the leagues as a unity that registers the players. The data should go to them. They should be in control of that data. If they remove it, it should highlight it, and the league should make decisions what's done with that data. If they want to keep it for the year, they keep it. If they want to get rid of it, they get rid of it. But that's because it's not designed properly. It really isn't. Sorry, stop.
That's right. That's right. I'll go back to trying to demonstrate what the system's doing at the moment.
Yes. I know,
Make sure that everyone's aware of that. If having folded a team, hopefully you saw the email that it just provided us notification. The club can go in and unfold that team for 14 days. Again, they should be providing an explanation as to why.
I've seen the players on that demo team. They're not very good.
As the coach, I don't trust.
Exactly. So he ain't got the right safeguarding things.
It's an adult men's team. It's fine. So that has restored the team now. If I come back out of this, though, you'll see that officials is now in amber, and there's NA for league. So that's because all it's done is reactivate the team. The club would need to go back through and reapply all of the officials. Put myself back as coach, and re-enter them into the league, so they can now do this. And as I said before, as long as there are no players registered with a league, the club can change the league that the team is playing in, so they'll be able to manage that, if they're moving between different leagues each season.
So when you put a new team in, okay, and I will have them at Christmas, for January start, will I get an email?
Do you want me to pop it in the East Bucks Lions?
No, thanks, mate. No, put it in the other one. They play in the adult league. Put it in Gary's, not mine.
Put them back in this one.
Yeah. If we get a league, right? If we get an email, if you're going to run this next season, I'm going to get 900,000 emails telling me teams have gone in the system. I don't really care. What I want to be able to do is go into a portal that allows me to see who have applied, import them into eSparks and say, I've accepted them. Okay. And then have certain flag fields so I can say they're a new club, they need to be approved by the AGM. There's lots of things I need that this system is not providing and is never going to provide on any roadmap I've seen from the FA. So we talk about recruitment, we talk about stress. The biggest stress we deal with is FA IT and the inability for them to understand what is required. And the fact that they roll out systems and we go, no, it's not working again.
Yeah.
I'll see about that. I like the idea of that feature request about, flagging whether it's a newly created team or returning team.
Yeah,
as I say, we're still building the affiliation for next season, and what that will then look like for leagues. So I can feed that in.
Yeah, I'm on many clubs at the moment because it's the only way I can show them how to work player registration systems, because they just don't understand it. And they go in, but I put them on Got Football. I said, yeah, but you got to put them on this other one, and I'll walk you through it. So I walk them through it, and that's the only way to get the clubs to get these players on there. And they don't understand half of the stuff I'm saying to them.
And again,
you're saying about recruitment. The problem is, right? And I go around every week to different grounds, talking to different people, and there needs to be a fundamental change in what we're trying to do. We constantly say, oh, it's going to be volunteers, blah, blah, blah. You can't run it all with volunteers anymore. You have to run it as a business. You have to move to a different business model, because if you don't, you won't get the right people supporting the systems going forward. The FA have to listen to the leagues. They have to do it. The one big change we need to do is teach all the players the laws of the game, because they don't know.
Okay, you're getting into a completely different debate on that one.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to shut that one off because that's. I'm conscious we've kept people beyond 8 o'clock as it is.
Sorry.
No, feel free to keep pushing clubs back to us so we can support them. I would say that you obviously have a bigger challenge than the vast majority of leagues, just because of your size and scale. So I fully accept that, particularly for a 900 team, 15,000 player league. You're also going to have you're in a different position probably than most leagues.
Yeah, I am,
and at a different scale.
But
Mick, you've got
like to see things that would help even the small 2-division league just to manage themselves.
Mick's got a hand up.
Go on, Mick. Sorry, Mick.
Hello.
Yep, go on.
Yeah,
that's Mick here. Alistair, if you're doing that way, we've got clubs that we would love to get rid of, but at the moment we can't. But you're going to mess our leagues up completely, and all our volunteers, as you call them, are not going to do it.
How do you mean?
The problem now.
How do you mean?
Well, we've got players, a league club. You say you can pack up or walk away. What does that do with our league and all the leagues I've played in? If they've won 25, do we wipe that off, give it to the other clubs, or what do we do?
So that's still exactly the same. So that's why it notifies you. I think it's going to be exceptionally rare that the first time you or I are going to hear that a team's folding is when that email comes through, because hopefully they're still kind of, there's that early, we should know that they're beginning to miss fixtures. They're beginning to struggle to put a team out for whatever reason. I think if that's the first that we've heard about it, it's a concern. Equally, the other league rules would still apply. So if they've played 75% of fixtures, the results are retained. If they haven't played 75% of fixtures, the results are cleared, same as it was before. So this process should complement league rules, not supersede or change existing rules.
I think that our league, personally, I will think it will do a hell of a lot of harm. So As I've been
I think
around
let's wait and see how many teams fold. At the moment, we're not aware of any that have gone through this process because I certainly haven't seen the emails from them. But we'll keep an eye on it.
I don't think the process is any different. So we take them off of, at the moment, I take them off of whole game if they fold. I then go into full time, and it gets rid of all the fixtures and results.
Yeah.
I think it's more. I think what Mick's trying to say is it's more to do with us not being in control of that.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And we're not in control, are we?
So
We're
I
not.
guess I would caveat
But it is
that.
what it is. It's there,
Yeah.
isn't it? So
I would counter that because you'd be amazed about the number of teams that fold, and we've had no idea. It's about 3 months later that Sunny League will come to us and say this team's folded 3 months ago, and we
to
weren't
be
aware.
fair, I haven't told
Yeah.
you about one.
but
That's all
6
about
years ago, I asked the FA to do data exchange, and we got told we're a legacy system and we're not good enough.
I mean, I'm not going to get onto the data exchanges because that goes way above my head.
Yeah, I know.
And it's too late in the evening for
it's one organisation that won't do data exchanges in a world where technology goes forward. Maybe if we could turn the FA into Twitter and sack half of them, they might get a response. Sorry. Oh, did I say that? I didn't mean that.
Well, I'm gonna move on to the next one, which is
Yeah,
just
go on,
looking
mate.
at
Go on, move on.
affiliation
move
for
on.
next season. So, as I mentioned before, I'm on the FA working group around what affiliation looks like and the I guess the functionality, if not the technical side of it. So, affiliation will be done through Club Portal from next year, and it's rather than the current system where the club goes through, they fill out the entire form, they submit it to us for review. We then have to add additional teams, and we can only approve the entire club at the point that all officials are compliant. It's moving to a bit more of a team-centered approach. So effectively, clubs will be able to add new teams themselves as and when ready, assuming they meet all requirements, which they should do because we'll have the first time the first team affiliates, we do all the club level stuff, and once that's there, it's there for the season. So if they're adding a new team in August or September time, the coach has got to be compliant for them to be able to proceed with it. They'll be able to purchase the insurance through the platform, and it will automatically affiliate them. So they'll be able to hopefully do that team affiliation process in about 5 minutes without having to come through to us at the county, raise an invoice, and then them have to log back in to make payments. So it should speed up that whole process. It's improved functionality, but it is a change, and this is where we want to work with yourselves as the leagues to try to get clubs aware of it. I don't have any demonstration available at this stage. It's still in pre-production. But what we would like is to, through kind of April through to June, is to get out on a regional basis and piggyback effectively on the back of league meetings to come and demonstrate this functionality and talk to the clubs about what it's going to look like. Particularly, I think the adult leagues, we want to do that on the basis that you're more likely to get the one team club playing in an adult league. The youth leagues will probably do it on a bit more of a regional basis because actually we don't want to go to or put the club officer through having to sit and listen to me do it at the East Berks, the Thames Valley Development, the Reading and West Berks, or the BYDL AGMs, and do the same presentation 3 times. So we'll probably be a bit more tactical about the youth ones.
Just do it as a team meeting, mate, for us for the youth.
We will do as well.
And we'll ask them to make sure they get on there.
Yeah, and there will be a lot of the resources. The thing with it as well is it's building on that functionality that's already in Club Portal. So the process will look very similar to the process that's going through at the moment for accreditation revalidation. Adding team officials is exactly the same process it is now. So half of the functionality is already in place. It's just the new ones about creating new teams and the kind of the financial side of it that will be new.
Could I ask something that would make leagues' job a lot easier?
Yeah, absolutely.
And because you're on the committee, this thing's quite simple. A league reference field that the club has to fill out, alphanumeric up to 30 characters, okay, and producible and downloadable on the league portal in a CSV format, so that we can go through and check that if we allocate a number to a team, then we do it for the year, because it incorporates their age group and their number in this year.
And like a team organizational ID.
Yes, we use 22 five digits hyphen 5 digits. The first five
Yeah.
digits is their age group and number for this year. The second digits was their age group and number from last year, because it makes our easy to work out streaming. 900 teams, you've got a lot of teams, and they don't all just go up 1 year. So you then have a reference, but that reference needs to be downloadable from the whole game system by leagues, because all this data sits in there. Safeguarding, blah, 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 blah. None of it is downloadable unless you want a PDF, and then you have to try and find software, which is really expensive, to turn PDF into a decent Excel spreadsheet or something.
Yeah,
It's
no,
really annoying when they can do it very, very easily.
yeah, no, we'll feed that back.
Yeah,
Every
please,
so every organisation, every team, club, county, league
Yeah,
will have
because
a
they
unique
will
ID.
register to the leagues in March and April. Okay,
Yeah.
we will give them a number before that. When they go in to start registering these teams on the system, they should get the number from their league and say, this is the number for East Sparks. I'm putting it in East Sparks Football Alliance and not East Berkshire League. And that number then appears, and we can then do a reconciliation against our software and go, right, these are the teams we haven't got on there, because I'm constantly having to go through the whole game system and see in a club which teams have been allocated. No, they haven't done this. No, they give it a new name. No, they've done this. They put them in the wrong age group. You know how much traffic
Yeah.
you generate. And then just before the season starts, everything changes because they think they can change left, right, and centre. No, once they're doing it, we're just charging them money, and they go, "We can't afford it." I said, "It's not my problem. Read the rules."
No, that's fine. I will.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
pass that back. I'll put it on my list.
Thank you.
The other thing around affiliation for next season is just around a couple of safeguarding changes. So this is a new one. Again, this hasn't gone out to clubs yet. It will be going out to them in the new year, but it's just around some additional safeguarding requirements. So the first one is for adult clubs. Every adult club at the point of affiliation 2023 must have a nominated welfare officer. They don't have to have done any qualifications next season. They just have to have a they have to have a named point of contact for that. By 2024, by the point they affiliate in 2024, that individual must have completed a player welfare course, whether it's safeguarding children, safeguarding adults, safeguarding for all. So we're kind of gradually building this one, and we have to name them this year, and they've got to be qualified by next.
Yeah, because they can have under 16s playing in their adult teams, can't they?
Exactly.
So there's playing kids, but the FA need to get a decent idea of what a child means.
So adult teams with under 18s will need to have a DBS in place and have completed the player welfare course. We're almost about halfway up to speed on those already. So we're working on that again over the course of the next few months. And then youth teams, all youth team officials must have that safeguarding children qualification. So we're over 3/4 of the way to achieving that at this point. So again, it's just to put that on your radar so that you're aware as leagues as those questions come in. But to say, all of this information will be going out to clubs in the new year.
Okay, that's good.
I will always flag this one again because it saves a bit of my life, but just around the online support desk for all of the FA platforms. It is a good resource in terms of answering FAQs or functionality if you're stuck with how to do a certain process. Chances are it will be on there, and they will have written an FAQ about it. So by all means, I'll pop that link in the chat again. But it's a good one to have bookmarks in just as a handy reference.